Hi, I'm Jonathan, and I'm a book-buying-aholic. Hello, and welcome to my channel. My name is Jonathan Cohn, and today I have my July book haul video. Usually, I start the video saying I'm gonna buy fewer books next month, but this month I bought a lot of books, and I'm gonna have to continue doing that because I bought a lot of books this month, and I did not mean to. Last month in June, I bought a bunch of books anyway and had a bunch of books from publishers and authors sent to me, and then I also went to the convention, LibertyCon, and bought some books from authors there, and I also went to McKay's in Chattanooga. So I did a special book haul video in June just for that. And in July, I thought, I'm just going to buy a few books, not that many, and that'll be it. And that was the plan. And then my parents moved up to Knoxville, and so I went to go help them move into their house. And there's a bookstore, another McKay's bookstore, another of that chain up there, and I just can't help myself. I went up to McKay's up there, and I bought a lot of books. I bought 20 books for $55, which is a great deal, but I'm losing room to put all these, and I am buying books way faster than I can read them. So I'm trying to get through them all, but it's difficult. So I have 28 books that I purchased this month, and then I have 3 that were gifted to me by the publishers, or sent to me by the publishers. I have some Star Wars, I have Star Trek, I have legal thriller, I have fantasy, science fiction, I have a one manga that I purchased, and then of course the books that were sent to me by publishers. So why don't I just go ahead and jump into the books that I purchased, starting with the legal thrillers. So for the legal thrillers, I purchased The Firm by John Grisham, one of his oldest and most famous books, and I'm really excited to read this, and I actually really like this cover. I really like this cover. So, and I got this for like $1. And then I also purchased The Street Lawyer. Probably not one of his most famous books, but I'm excited to read it. And by the way, I go into all John Grisham books pretty much blind. I don't really know what they're about. I might know if it's like a sequel to another book or a series, but generally I go in blind because I really like the experience of being surprised by it. I also purchased his book, The Client, and I also purchased his book Bleachers and Playing for Pizza, which these books are very different. I've heard from my dad. Actually, my dad is the person that I share my love of John Grisham books the most. My dad, every time I finish a Grisham book, I talk to him about it afterwards, because odds are he's read it, because I think he's read just about all of the Grisham books over time. He started reading Grisham, years and years and years ago. So he's a big fan of Grisham. So every time I read one, I try to talk to him. And of all the books I purchased this month of John Grisham, Playing for Pizza was the one that he got most excited for me to read. So I'm very interested. I don't know if it's his favorite or if it's just so different that he felt it was worth talking about, but that's the one he's excited for me to get to. And I'll get to all of these eventually. He's usually a pretty quick read regardless. I also purchased The Confession by John Grisham, which is I love this cover, and this is my preferred format for John Grisham books. Tall rack mass market. I like the mass markets fine, regular ones, but tall rack mass market for John Grisham specifically is my jam. It's really weird that I like it, but I do. Then I also purchased The Racketeer by John Grisham, and that's my last John Grisham book I purchased, and I honestly don't know anything about it either. I don't know anything about any of them. I'm going in totally blind, which I'm excited about. And once I read these books and the ones that are on my shelves, that's about 1/3 of the Grisham books, and then I've already read previously about 1/3 of the Grisham books, so I'm going to get and so I only have about 1/3 of them left to buy, which I'm really excited to. I cannot wait for the day that I will be able to rank all of his books. I'm hoping to rank, because he's getting really close to having 50 novels out, so I'm hoping that I'll catch up to him at that point and be able to rank all 50 John Grisham books. That'll be really fun. Now, I also purchased some Star Wars books. Star Wars books, don't buy that many most months. I've read, for the EU, I've read most of the adult books. I've read like 75% of the adult books. And so there's only a couple books left that I need to purchase. And so I only purchase books there when I really need to. And so I picked up the first 2 Force Heretic books because when I read the New Jedi Order back in 2017, 2018, and 2019, I borrowed the entire series from my brother-in-law, who's really the guy that kind of got me started into Star Wars books. But he let me read all of them, so I hadn't purchased them previously, and I've been trying to fill up my collection of them. And I already have the third book that I found at McKay's last month, and now I have the first two books in that trilogy. And by the way, the first book's called Remnant, the second book's Refuge. My good friend Caleb at Caleb Likes Books, he's currently reading this series, The New Jedi Order, and he's right at this point. He's just finishing up the third book as I record this, and he's moving on to the Final Prophecy soon, and you should check out his videos on the New Jedi Order. Speaking of the Final Prophecy, I also purchased The Final Prophecy by Greg Keyes, and so I bought that in mass market, and now I only have 2 New Jedi Order books left to purchase. I'd read them all, as I said. I've read them all, but I only have 2 left to purchase. I still need to get Destiny's Way, and I still need to get The Unifying Force. But other than that, I've actually collected the whole series. I have one of them in hardcover, star by star, and then the rest are in mass market. There's another series that I was getting close to purchasing the whole series for Star Wars and wanted to get it all, and that's the Republic Commando series. I had read the first 2, but owned the first 3. So I had the third book in the series, and I was waiting to read it for a while, but I do plan to get to it. And then I had not purchased books 4 and 5 because at my local bookstore, they only had them new. And I was just not interested in buying them new. If I was going to spend that much on a book, I was going to buy something else at the moment. But I found these for under $3 each at McKay's. So I purchased Order 66 and the 501st Republic Commando books. And they were each, as I said, under $3 each. And they look practically brand new. There's a little bit of like a little thing on the corner of each. But other than that, I mean, it looks great. They look great. I am so excited to finish this series. I did enjoy the first 2 books a little bit. All right. I also purchased the Star Wars The New Rebellion by Christine Catherine Rush. And this is one of the standalones from the Bantam era of publishing for Star Wars. And this one's actually quite long for a Star Wars book. It's about 530 pages, which is about the length of like I, Jedi. Most Star Wars books are 400 pages or less. So this is a bit of a longer one. And I've not heard a lot about this book, good or bad. You hear people talk about it. So I'm excited to get into it. It's got that classic. I'm pretty sure that's Drew Struzan art. I'm going to check, but I'm pretty sure I'm right about that. Yep, it is Drew Struzan's artwork on there. All right, now, I also purchased a book that this was purely because of how interesting the book was. And this book is connected to the Shadows of the Empire book series. So the adult book for the Shadows of the Empire is written by Steve Perry. It's a huge bestseller. And this Shadows of the Empire was the movie without the movie that Lucasfilm did back in 1996, where they wanted to do video games and comics and books and toys and music. They even released a soundtrack for Shadows of the Empire. It was really a way to see, would people be interested in doing the prequel trilogy in a couple of years? And so there's a bunch of stuff for it. And it's a really fun publishing initiative. Shadows of the Empire by Steve Perry has the novel has a few issues, but it's still a fun story. Well, I purchased the junior novelization by Christopher Golden that I did not even know existed. I didn't even know this thing existed. And I'm in a friend group with a bunch of hardcore Star Wars book nerds, like the people who really know the Star Wars books. And they had no idea this existed either. And so they were like shocked. And I got it for like $2. And, it's really short. I'll probably be able to read it in like an hour or 2. And it's just an adaptation of the adult book. But I bought this purely because I was like, I didn't know that they did that. And that's really cool. And it's only $2. So that's why I got that one. All right, what about the fantasy books? I did purchase a decent number of fantasy books this month. I purchased When Dragons Rage by Michael A. Stackpole. This is one of the books in his Dark Glory War, I think it's called. And it's, the Dark Glory War. And I owned the book Fortress Draconis, but there's also the third book in the series I still have yet to get, which is the Divided something. It's called The Grand Crusade, and then he also has the prequel book, I think it's called The Dark Glory War, and then the problem is that the prequel was the first book to come out, but I don't know whether I start with book one or start with the prequel because I only have book one. I don't have the prequel yet, but that was the first one to come out, and I'm usually a release order guy, so it's really confusing. So let's continue on with, it's the Dragon Crown Cycle. That's what that series is called. The series is called the Dragon Crown Cycle. The first book in the series is The Dark Glory War. That's what it is. Anyway, some other fantasy books that I purchased. Okay, so these next two books purchased purely because of the cover art for the first book. So, I'm a big sucker for Daryl K. Sweet's cover art. He is my favorite book cover artist. I just did a video this month talking about my favorite cover artists and my favorite cover art from those artists. And he has a book that I would a piece of cover art that I would consider to be my favorite piece of cover art ever. And I have a art book of his that includes this painting in it. And I also had seen this book online, but I'd never seen it at my local bookstore. But I finally found it. And I'm not ready to read this series yet because this isn't, this series, it's the Durini series by Catherine Kurtz. There's like a bunch of trilogies in this series, and this is one of the middle trilogies, so like it's not meant to be started with necessarily. But I purchased the first two books in this trilogy because of the cover art of book one, and I was so excited for it. So the book is The Bishop's Heir. It has, I love this cover art. It has, the kind of the horizon with the kind of the sun either rising or setting. You have the kind of the blue sky compared with the white blue snow. You have the woman in the very striking blue dress with the red flaming hair sitting on top of the horse with the soldiers, and you have the army. I mean, it's just a gorgeous cover. I love this cover. If I could get this, if I could find if Daryl K. Sweet, his original painting is still out there and I could stock up some money to buy it, I would, because I love this cover. And so I purchased this and the second book, which I like the cover art for the second book, The King's Justice. But, I mean, it's not a favorite necessarily. This is also by Daryl K. Sweet. But the cover art for this one, gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. So that's why I bought those. I do not intend to read those in the next year or so until I actually purchase and read the other Durini books, which, again, will be a while. But I bought those purely because of the cover arts. Now, this next one is a duplicate that I purchased, but I have good reason for doing so. And that's The Wayfarer Redemption. I bought this book in hardcover at my local bookstore because I figured I do want to get into this series, and that was the only copy they had. And then I found at McKay's last month, books 2 through 4 in mass market. And then when I saw this book for like $1 or $2 at my local, or at the other McKay's that I went to, and it was in mass market, and this is the version of the cover without the $1.99 banner that some of them have. Anyway, I saw this and was like, you know what? I'm gonna get this one. I'm gonna fire out my hardcover. I'm gonna not fire it out. I'm gonna take it to my local bookstore and trade it in for credit. But now my whole set matches, and it also has that gorgeous cover art by Royo, who I love his cover art. I'm running out of space there. All right, the last fantasy books I bought were the Green Rider books by Kristen Britton. I brought books 1 and 2. Book 1, Green Rider, and the second book, First Rider's Call. And there's an interesting story behind this cover art that Christy Golden, who writes science fiction tie-in books and fantasy tie-in books for like World of Warcraft and for Star Wars and for Star Trek and for Assassin's Creed. She writes tie-in books. That's what she's known for. That's what she's done her whole career. She did at one point try to break into writing fantasy under the pen name Jared and Bell. And so she wrote the book AD 999. And she had a pitch with her publisher for what her book would look like. And she pitched this cover. And her publisher said, no, we're not interested in that. We have a better cover for you. And she said, oh? And they gave her this cover. And first of all, the book tanked sales-wise. Second of all, it's not that good a cover, obviously. And then like a year or two later, The Green Rider came out with this book cover, and it was a bestseller from Daw Books. That was you could feel her frustration. This would have been a much better cover for Christy Golden. But I am interested in reading the Kristen Britton Green Rider series, and I don't think there's that many books. I think there's only like 7 or 8 books in the series, so that should be easy to get into. All right, what about for science fiction books? I have a science fiction book by my favorite science fiction author, Timothy Zahn, Dead Man's Switch, one of his Bane books from the 80s. Very classic 80s cover. Like this book, this looks like a book from the 80s from Bane. So I'm excited for that. Who did the cover art for this one? This was David Mattingly, of course, the guy who does all of the Honor Harrington novels as well. I also bought a science fiction nonfiction. And you might be thinking, that doesn't make sense. A science fiction nonfiction? Yes. It's actually listed as speculative fact, which I find hilarious. And that is Borderlands of Science by Charles Sheffield. This is a book about how to write science in your science fiction. It is about 380 pages with some small print, and it basically goes through the different elements of how to write science and science fiction. They talk. The first has a chapter 1, which is like an overview chapter, and then they have a chapter on the realm of physics. They talk about physics in the large, physics in the very large, the constraints of chemistry, the limits of biology, new worlds for old, spaceflight, far out alternatives, Deus Ex Machina, chaos. And beyond science, things like that. And so this book is meant to be like a resource for science fiction writers. And I got this for really cheap at my local bookstore. And I was like, you know what? This looks kind of interesting. And if I ever actually get back into writing myself, I might use this a little bit. It's a little bit outdated, and even the book itself in the opening chapter says it's outdated, but it might be helpful and guide me in the direction of some questions I might have. So it's a good resource book. This actually was published by Bane, which is really interesting because they don't do that many nonfictions. All right. Now for the Star Trek books I purchased. I purchased Star Trek Deep Space Nine Unity by S.D. Perry. This actually, you have the S.D. Perry's first 2 Avatar books, and then you have a tetralogy of the Mission Gamma books, and then this is the book that happens after the Mission Gamma books, and I had read all of those previous ones, but hadn't got to this one yet, so now I can read this one. I'm excited to read it, because I'm pretty sure this is the one that either Sisko or his son comes back, one of the two, because Sisko's on the cover, but anyway, I'm really excited for this. Also, I purchased some Titan books. I purchased the Sword of Damocles book by Geoffrey Thorne, which is a terrific title. And then I bought Star Trek Titan Over a Torrent Sea by Christopher L. Bennett. And I bought these because I want to read the whole Titan series eventually. I've read the first 2. I own a bunch of them. Previously, I bought 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I own 6, and these 2 will bring me to 8. And then there's one more novel that I have yet to purchase, and then a novella. And then I'll have the whole series. And so I got both of these. This one actually includes diagrams inside of the ship, which I'm actually really excited to get to. So that's those Star Trek books. And then I purchased 2 of the Gateways books. I purchased Doors into Stone by Robert Greenberger, and I purchased No Man's Land by Christy Golden. I already owned 2 of the Gateways books. Now I have 4, and once I have all 7, I'm going to try to read the whole Gateways series. That's kind of like a crossover series that has, literally all of the Star Trek lines of books. The original crew, you have the Next Gen crew, you have the Voyager crew, you have the Deep Space Nine crew, you have the Enterprise crew, I think, and then you have the 6th crew that's in there is the New Frontier crew, I'm pretty sure, which is the Peter David series. And then the 7th book is a crossover of all 6 previous ones into all 7. And that one was a hardcover. So I plan to get that one eventually. But once I have that series, I'll be able to read it too. All right. For the last book that I purchased, this is not a novel. This is not a prose book necessarily. This is a manga. And people who follow the channel know I don't really read manga. At the very beginning of my channel, and I mean like in the first like 2 months of me starting the YouTube channel, I read the first 3 volumes of My Hero Academia. And they were fine, but a couple of things. People who follow my channel know that I don't really read manga that much. I did read the first 3 volumes of My Hero Academia when I started the channel back in like 2021, and I enjoyed them a little bit, but I didn't feel the compulsion to continue reading them was the first problem I had. The second problem is I can read one of those thin volumes in like an hour, and I was having to spend like $10 to purchase it or more, and it just wasn't worth it. And then the third problem I had was that those videos tanked on my channel. They really performed poorly. And so when you combine all those things, I was like, I'm just not interested in that manga. And I was like, maybe I'll get into another manga eventually. And every big booktuber now has gotten into One Piece. And I've been wanting to read some of like the ones like One Piece and Full Metal Alchemist and some of the others, but they're just so expensive for what you actually get to read, so I just hadn't gone into them. Well, at my local bookstore, I saw the first 3 volumes of One Piece for like $6, and I thought, that's 3 volumes together, so it's like $2 a volume. I think it's worth it. I think that's a worthwhile purchase. And it's, the beginning of One Piece. They had issues, or they had volumes like 60 through 70 in these 3-volume bind-ups, but they didn't have bind-ups 4 through 6. If they had, I might have purchased that too. But my plan is eventually, I'm not holding saying it's going to be 2024, it might be 2025, it might be 2024, you never know. I am eventually going to read this, and then if I really enjoy it, I might go and purchase the more volumes online if they're reasonable, or if my local bookstore gets them for a reasonable price, I might get them. But this is the first 3 volumes of One Piece, and I'm excited to read this eventually. This will be something that I probably will be able to read it in like a day or so, because it's really quick. And I promise, I promise you, I am not going to turn into a manga channel like some YouTubers have decided to do. If I get into manga, it'll be like 1 book a month out of my 10. Everything else will be novels. But I do want to at least try it out. So I will have at some point, not this month, not next month, eventually, I will try out One Piece. All right, so with that, let's go into the books that publishers sent me. I had one publisher, Bane, send me 3 books. They actually did something they never do. They sent me the advanced reader copy. So Bane, traditionally, when they send books to reviewers, some of the others, like Mike from Mike's Book Reviews gets them. Sometimes Brian Lee Durfee, when he was running his channel, he would get them. When they do that, they traditionally just send their like copies of the actual books, whether it was via hardcover or trade paperback. But they've decided to sample doing arcs again, and so they did 3 arcs that they sent me and a few other people, and the first one is Freelancers of Neptune, and I am really excited. I actually met Jacob Hollow at LibertyCon, and I talked to him about this book, and the pitch for this book, according to him, is Firefly meets Ringworld by Larry Niven with a cat girl in it. And that is such a weird crossover book. That is such a weird crossover book that I really want to get into it and read about it. And Jacob's just the nicest guy. He's just the nicest guy. So I'm excited to read that. Also, they sent me S.M. Sterling's To Turn the Tide. It's the end of the world as they know it is the tagline. This is a time travel or alternate reality. I'm not sure exactly. Historical fiction, kind of. It's kind of sci-fi historical fiction. It's got, all I know actually about the book is that A, it's S.M. Sterling, who's like a legend in the fantasy genre, and B, that this book has the Roman Empire in it. The reason I know that is because Bane back when the whole meme about the men thinking about the Roman Empire was a big deal, they used that in the marketing for this book for their pre-sales, and I was like, that's a genius idea, and it actually got me really interested in the book. So I want to read this. It's a pretty long one, but I'm excited to get into it. The last book that they sent me was Storm Furies. The Elf Home series continues by Ren Spencer or Wen Spencer, and apparently Wen is supposed to be at DragonCon, and I'll be at DragonCon, so I'll try to get this signed and meet her there. But this is one of the books in her series with pretty nice cover art there. I like. So that is all the books that I purchased or received in the month of July. If you've read any of these, let me know your thoughts on them. If you haven't read them, tell me which ones you're interested in. What books did you buy in July? And what do you think about me getting into manga and stuff? So until next time, I'm Jonathan, and thank you for watching.